Okay, I've been asked to do one about a Brazilian woman that was found known as Luzia Woman. She's in a British museum. She's in a Brazilian museum, and the reason I'm showing you this slide right here is that this is what was left found of the skull and her body, pretty much amid the debris after a huge fire that they had there on September 2nd of last year. And the building went up in flames. And whenever it did, a lot of it collapsed, and then other things came and collapsed and fell upon this. And while it was in a superheated state, it just got crushed. And so it's going to be about impossible to recreate, although they already do have the plastic recreation fakes that they always worked with when looking at it. But the original is pretty much gone, I guess you'd say. Anyhow, looking into this is a cave site that they had found, and Luzia Woman, and it's the name for an 11,500-year-old Upper Paleolithic period skeleton found in a cave at Lapa Vermelha, Brazil, in 1975 by archaeologist Annette Lemming in Pereira. In the center reconstruction is the skull, and at the right is the Xingu tribesman, which is said to be related genetically of the Amazon basin. Now, what's caused a lot of confusion, I think, is that in a lot of these elder creations, just like when they do caveman and they put hair all over them and things like that, that they've done this in somewhat of a red ochre type of look. But we can see the facial characteristics that carry on through this in genetics. And of course, black people try to claim this as somehow Negroids coming to Americas, and that has no truth or basis in reality to it. But when they talk about this may have a North African origination, they're talking about like the Phoenicians and the people that lived up there that actually did have seaworthy boats and had done a lot of things going back this time. But it looks like this must have come across the Bering Ice Bridge at about 11,500 years ago, which is really 9,500 BC. And we've already seen here recently, I put out a video where they have found these Caucasians that have come across that predate this by many thousands of years, coming across that Bering Ice Bridge. And when at glacial maximum, the land right there would have been pretty much connected and made it a whole lot easier, and there would have been more than double the amount of land and stuff in that area. And they have found this skeleton thing there, and or a set of skeletons with a family and everything, and it's kind of neat. And I've made two videos on it. One of them went into more depth once I found out more about it and had some confirmation and things. The first one was more of like a reveal. Anyhow, just a simplistic looking at this skull that's over here. This is the original skull that they had. And if you'll look, the nasal slit that's on this is very much a triangle or the shape of an A. And you can see the bridging across the nose right here and the way that that fits together. And that's not necessarily anything that's a Negroid trait. It's a Caucasian or Mongoloid trait. Negroids, where their nasal sill opening is more of a rounded or a spade type shape. I can show that to you real quick, I guess. Looking at the differences between skulls. And I think at just a glance, you can almost tell the difference between a Negroid skull and a Caucasian. The Negroid being over here having more rectangle-shaped eyes, Caucasians and Mongoloids having more oval, but then also this rounded nasal slit versus the triangle that's going on, and the lower jaw and how it's prognostic and sticks out versus the flatter face that's on this. And there's a lot of conjecture on things like that, but I guess here's a better look at just a straight Negroid type skull, and you can see the nasal opening that's on that in comparison to something that would look maybe like this. And so that's your Caucasian type. This is your Caucasian type. And this one, by the way, shows physicians way back in the day. They have over 10 pieces that they found that are built along this line and have that trepanney of the skull and stuff. Here's another Caucasoid, perhaps, that's going on. But again, a good look at the Negroid skull can easily show you the difference of the two. And now I think if we go back, it's easy to see that it really doesn't have any Negroid characteristics to it. It really contains a Mongoloid, Caucasoid type of nasal sill opening. And I believe this to be an Asiatic, but far northeastern Asiatic or Amerindian Eskimo, and the people that live up in the Inuits and so on. And there's genetic connections that connect all of these too. There's also a Solutrean hypothesis, which I strongly believe in too. Yeah, believe it or not, the Smithsonian is actually behind this versus trying to cover it up, which most people think that they do. And there's a few researchers there that are showing you it goes back 16, 17,000 years, 22, 23,000 years in another site, and how they all had come from Spain and Iberia and that whole area around there where you see a lot of the Cro-Magnon originate. And then it's there and it's over in Virginia. And they carry this X haplotype with them, and it shows up whenever you look at genetics in both of those spaces too. And it shows you there's definitely a primordial connection between the two. And so it's kind of neat. You know, they do these red ochre pictures on things like they did for Brahma Man and they did for others, and it just makes it look a little more archaic, just like when they do caveman and they put hair all over them and things like that. If you actually gave that Neanderthal man a haircut, he really looks like Chuck Norris. Okay, and so looking at those two, wow, that blurs out. I'll just read this off to you. After linguistic studies have backed up genetic studies with ancient patterns have been found between the languages spoken in Siberia and those spoken in the Americas, two 2015 autosomal DNA genetic studies confirm that the Siberian origins of the natives of the Americas. And there's your Amerindians. There's also another mix that they're finding, and it looks like that ancient Caucasoid type that had come in predating all of the Amerindians into the Americas was somehow lost, but we can still see it in a lot of folklore with people saying that there were red-headed giants and all these things going on in the Americas. And then in South America, there are ancient beliefs in a bearded god, whenever none of those and Amerindians really grow facial hair at all naturally, unless they have some admix or something from people that do. And so it's kind of a strange showing there of um, that they must have had contact in a prior time with people that had beards. Whenever Pizarro showed up, that they thought that he was Viracocha's himself coming back, and so that showed you another effect. And these people pretty much were gone, but and it looks like the same smallpox type of thing and diseases that were brought over here and broke out had taken out the rest of that population. Now, when he came, he asked them, which he noted himself, the nobility there were actually lighter skinned and looked much like Spaniards, but the other people had a darker type skin. So it looked like there was a racial class almost going on a little bit, and or like a tanning for the people that worked outside a lot, and the nobility are kept pale. And so it shows you that people have that adaptable melanin in their skin as opposed to a constant dark type skin, and or an olive or a reddened type skin. Indeed, whenever you look at the ancient American Indians, everybody always pictures them as being red, and they call them red, and they call Chinese yellow, and so on, but they're not really that yellow, and Amerindians really weren't that red. Once you finally get a good look at some color photographs, you can tell that, no, they're just a little swarthy or whatever. They have some reddish component to their skin due to their melanin types that they have going on and which ones exaggerate. But it's more and more like this man here than most Indians having any of the skin that was more like this. And you do see that in the darker Eskimos and so on, but if you take a good look at Inuits, they have a much paler skin quite often too that adds to it. So yeah, the Caucasian nasal slit, or Caucasoid mongoloid slash nasal slit here, is kind of a giveaway. Also the fact that the eye orbits and stuff are quite round as opposed to squared off is another giveaway, and the fact that it doesn't have any prognathism to it would show you that it doesn't have anything to do with negroids necessarily. But what does it have to do with, and I hope it's not all totally lost. Again, they have copies of these skulls, and so they still work with them. They never got anything genetic out of it, and I don't know if they could find a tooth now and then try to even get into that. Perhaps they didn't want to do it before, but now that the whole skull's been shattered down and there may be a few teeth they found, maybe it's time to just go ahead and see if you can get any DNA out of those teeth, because that skull is gone. So anyhow, guys, like, share, and subscribe and stuff, and I thought I'd show this to you. It kind of shows you that these people were here as some of the earliest Amerindians. The oddity is it seemed like they ran all the way into South America at a rapid rate, and then what we know as native North Amerindians came down in a secondary type wave. But this being just some 9500 BC is predated by over 6,000 years and even earlier by a lot of other Caucasoid type people that had come across, some of them having yellow hair, blonde, red hair, and so on, found in the Cloud people, in the Wari people, and others all the way down here in deep South America, showing you that they had made it all the way through and down into there in way primordial times. People finding this quite often wanted to try to attach it to early boat travel because they don't see it as much in North America as they do in South. Now, when we finally figure out the skeletons, I'm like, well, oh, it happened a long time before, and perhaps the Amerindians come in and kind of wipe them out and or push them down into more South America than they originally were. But one good look at the Amerindians, and you can see the difference between somebody that looks like an Arapaho versus a Hopi versus a Navajo, and how much genetic differences they have amongst themselves. And it's not really a monolith thing. People don't, again, look like the guy on the Indian-headed buffalo nickel. That's one type of tribe of black people, and they didn't, just like pretty much like Africa itself, there's a lot of different subgroups that are inside of there, like Khoisan, East Africans, uh, West African Bantus, and so on, that are different than each other, and there's not necessarily a monolith of Amerindians, and we see that quite well. The difference between the buffalo head nickel and like Jay Silverheels, who used to play Tonto, is quite evident. And then you look at Hopi girls with their rounded faces and almost Asiatic looking eyes, and you can see a radical difference between these three. And they're quite pale, even though they live out in the sun constantly. So anyhow, yeah, guys, like, share, and subscribe. And I don't want to go on too long with this. Just wanted to do one that's a little bit concise this time, rather than go into more depth. But I think this just shows basic information that may be lost now, sadly. Peace.